Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, it's Jory, and I've got something really exciting that I want to plant a seed with you guys. So one of my most favorite things to do is to go on retreats. And after having been on so many transformative, life-changing retreats, it became an intention of my career to lead retreats, which I've done for many years. And unfortunately, of course, it had to be canceled for 2020, but I am planting the seed that I am planning to resume my women's retreats this fall, assuming that things continue to go as they are going with vaccines. And hopefully that's going to give us the ability to gather safely in person together. So I'm just planting the seed to have you stay tuned that if all seems to go as planned, I'm going to be bringing an amazing group of women to Miraval Resorts in Tucson, Arizona in late September. So if you are craving to get out, to travel, to have something to look forward to, connect with yourself, to connect with others, to be in a space that is sacred and beautiful for relaxation and rejuvenation, and delve a little bit deeper into your mindfulness practice, stay tuned. And in the meantime, enjoy today's episode. This is something that I am so excited to share with you, all these tools of communication. And it's something that I think we all need greater practice in. So I really hope that you get a lot of value out of this episode. And if you are wanting more information on upcoming retreats, be sure to go to my website, joryrose.com. The link is in the show notes, and you can subscribe to my newsletter, and that way you'll be in sight of getting all the upcoming announcements as the world begins to open back up and we can gather safely and in person. All right, you guys, thanks so much and enjoy today's episode. Hey everyone, it's Jory Rose, and welcome back to Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I'm so happy that you've tuned in today. I'm going to be talking about communication and the power of language. This is something I get really, really nitpicky about with my clients and as well with my family at times, because language holds a lot of power. And how we communicate and our ability to communicate effectively in large part is due to not only the words that we use, but our awareness of our patterns of communication. So I'm going to talk to you today about so many different aspects of communication that as a therapist, I work a lot with my clients and helping them to cultivate the awareness to recognize the power of their words and not just the spoken word and how they are communicating to others, but it also impacts the language in which we are speaking to ourselves in our own mind, because language matters. It holds power, it has impact. And if we are not mindful of the words that we're using and the way in which we are delivering them, guess what's going to happen? We're going to stay stuck. And of course, as you know, as I've been talking about, to journey forward means to get unstuck. And so many of us can easily get stuck in patterns of communication that either bring about more defensiveness or bring about more disconnection or bring about arguments. Our power of communication can have the ability to connect us to others or can disconnect us from others. So I'm going to talk about a couple of different things today. If you've got a pad and paper, you might want to get some something to write with so you can take some notes. I will have some tools in the show notes that you can click on so you can be able to get a few more resources around this. I'll also put the names of some books in the show notes that I'm going to be referencing, sorry about that, during the episode, places that I continue to go back to remind myself, whether it's when I get stuck or to continue to show up for my clients and how to best guide them to have the most effective communication as possible. So I want to start by asking you a question and have you think about, have you ever really slowed down to be aware of your style of communication? Have you ever really thought about the words that you use, the tone that you speak in, the volume in which you speak, as well as your body language? Because I'm going to venture to say that these four things all have to be in alignment for you to get the message across that you're intending to get across. You could have the right words, but if your body language is off, your message is not going to be received in the way you intend. I actually tell this story of, I was working with a couple years ago, and they were pretty good in terms of these four different aspects of their communication with each other. They were careful to choose their words. They really tried to work on and choose a body language that felt open and receiving. The tone was okay. However, one of the partners in this couple, their volume in which they spoke used to even unjar me. Like, I would get agitated, feeling like I was being yelled at, even though that wasn't the intention. That's how it was received. So in absence of awareness, we can be missing the mark to get our message heard, to get our voice to be validated and understood of what we're trying to say. So again, I invite you to consider, pay attention in your upcoming interactions, not only the words, because when we think about communication, we tend to focus solely on what it is that we're saying, but I invite you to consider the other aspects as well. The tone, your body language, as well as your volume. You might even ask for feedback from people around you saying, hey, when I communicate, do you feel the intention of which I'm putting forth? Does this feel open? Does this feel kind? Does this feel compassionate? Or is it going to be all about, am I going to win this argument? Is it going to spawn defensiveness or criticism? All different aspects can arise out of poorly communicated communication. So remember that language holds power. One of my favorite examples of how this was demonstrated was, I was once at a conference in which the model of therapy called ACT, which stands for Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. We were being guided in a training on this form of therapy, which is just beautiful. I absolutely love ACT because it is, to me, the fundamentals of putting mindfulness into action and a framework for therapy. I do a lot of this with my clients. I just don't name that's what I'm doing. So the tenets of ACT, one of which is understanding the power of our language and communication. And the guy who was leading this workshop went through to describe the following scenario. And I'm going to describe it here for you. And I really want you to tune into what I'm saying, and not just tune in, but I want you to notice, or I invite you to notice, what is arising in your body when I'm speaking. Okay, so imagine it is a warm, sunny summer afternoon. There is a slight breeze and you find yourself really thirsty and craving some lemonade. So you are so happy for this because you've got this overflowing, abundant lemon tree in your backyard, and it's so abundant and so ripe that even opening up your back door, you get this whiff of the citrus smell that's just naturally in the air that's being blown in the breeze. You walk over to this abundant yellow-filled fruit tree and you reach around trying to find the most perfect fruit. And as you touch each lemon to determine its ripeness and its juiciness, you can even smell the citrus oils a little bit stronger as you squeeze each fruit. And if you were to put your hand to your nose, you would smell the rich oils on your fingers. So you finally find the perfect lemon and you bring it to your nose and you smell it, and it just, this whole sense of comfort and ease washes over you as you are just embracing this warm summer afternoon. You bring the lemon inside and you pull out from your kitchen drawer a cutting board. You grab your sharpest knife. You decide to roll the lemon a little bit around on the countertop to help release some of the extra juices. You place it on the cutting board, noticing the stark comparison of its bright yellow color compared to the dark of the wood of the cutting board. You take your knife and you slowly slice into the lemon, creating two perfectly even halves. And as you slice into the lemon, not only does the smell become really strong and vibrant as some of the juice squirts up into your face, but you start to notice you're salivating at the anticipation of having this lovely cold glass of lemonade. And as you cut this lemon in half, some of the juice squirts down the side. One of the seeds gets cut in half and falls off the side of the lemon. You go and you grab a glass, you take it to the fridge, you fill it with ice, and you start squeezing this lemon into the glass, where then you're going to add some water and a little bit of sugar. And you are noticing this intense desire to bring this cold glass of freshly squeezed lemonade to your mouth, to have the refreshing flavor wash over you and cool down your body on this warm summer day. Okay. I just described this amazing situation in which you pick a lemon from a tree. What are you noticing now arising in your body? Like, even as I'm talking, I'm noticing my mouth begin to salivate a little bit, because even just the language produces a physiological response in my body. Isn't that amazing that even just words can create this automatic physical response? Okay, so now, if I were to say the word lemon, after just telling that story, you might still tune into that sensation. Maybe you feel it, a tingling in your mouth. Maybe you notice, maybe you're a little bit hungry or thirsty even. But it's not just the word lemon that does that for you. It's lemon within this greater context of language. If I were to say the word lemon for the next 15 seconds straight, it's going to lose its impact. So if I say lemon, 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 and I could go on and on, it's showing you it's not the word lemon in and of itself that creates a physiological response. Because if I were to keep saying the word lemon for a full solid minute, you might lose the impact of the meaning, and you might not get the same physiological response as when I paint this beautiful picture. So I love this example from ACT because it highlights the power of language. And it's not just the words that we speak, because I could have said the word lemon multiple times, but it's going to lose its impact without the context. So think about that for yourself. And again, when we think about communication, it's not just how we communicate with others, it is how we communicate to ourselves in our own minds, because we know how we relate to our thoughts, how we relate to our inner critic, as Joanna Kleinman so beautifully talked about in last week's episode, and you've heard me talk about many, many times before. It's not what's arising that matters as much as how we relate to what's arising. And the language in which we speak to in our own mind impacts our experiences. It impacts our self-view, whether we are stuck in having a strong inner critic, or whether we are feeling more confident and capable in any given moment. But we also know, because of our negativity bias, that we're easily going to get stuck on the negative, and we can easily spin. And we don't just spin on our own. We spin because we keep feeding ourselves thoughts that continue to keep us stuck. So that's a topic for a whole other podcast episode on not feeding the thoughts. And for right now, as we delve further into patterns of effective communication, I just want you to continue to be mindful. What are the words I'm speaking to in my own mind? And what are the words I'm speaking to others? And what is the power of that language? And if you find that you are not aligned, then this is a beautiful moment for a mindful reflection, for you to pause, to observe what's arising, to have that compassionate awareness, right? Because as soon as we are in judgmental awareness of what's arising, we go right back into the spiral of getting stuck. But if we can have compassionate awareness, then we have the ability to shift into a different dynamic, shift into a different pattern or habit, one that's going to serve us, one in which we are feeling aligned in our intentions and in our values. And so think about the people you talk to the most, right? So for many of you, it might be your partners, it might be your children, it might be your parents or your friends or your coworkers, right? That's going to be our inner circle. And you also likely talk differently to different people. You're not going to talk to your husband or your wife in the same tone that you might talk to a coworker, because you've already known that in that coworker environment, there are certain structures in which you want to present yourself, maybe a bit more professional or to come across more knowledgeable, or if you're a manager, one that's encouraging leadership, or if you are a part of a team, you want to speak in a way that doesn't put you in a hierarchy above the others. So you might have some greater rules for your communication patterns in a more formal setting. But oftentimes, with the people who we love the most, the people who are closest to us, we often don't have such rules for how we want to communicate. And I love the idea of mindful communication. And when I'm teaching mindful communication, whether it's to my clients or my daughters, or I'm practicing it myself, I come back to what is the intention? And so often, I think we get stuck in negative communication patterns, one in which our intentions aren't being received or our needs aren't being met, because we communicate in a way where we're trying to get somebody else to change. And I invite you to consider the difference between a communication in which you're trying to get someone to do something or get someone to change as a result, versus having that mindful communication be something as reflective of you simply speaking your truth. Having this communication be an opportunity to speak from a place of unapologetically naming what you're feeling, giving room for it to exist with compassion, not judgment. When we can practice this mindful communication, we begin to see a lot of shifts. We become less overly attached to how the other person is going to act, because we are standing within our own power. We are holding our sacred ground around what's important, valuing and honoring your needs, your feelings, your thoughts, and compassionately giving space for the environment of whatever is arising in this moment. Now, of course, as you can tell, these kind of patterns of communication may not necessarily be the thing that you're going to talk about in day-to-day transactional conversations. But even in those day-to-day transactional conversations, we begin to lose the power of communication. We begin to lose the power of connecting via communication. In fact, this is something I advise my clients who are married or partnered to do with their spouses or their partners, is to set time aside in your week, perhaps even only for 10 minutes, in which you have non-transactional communication. Because for so many people, our talking becomes a function of to-do lists, chores, the kids, the bills, maybe what's happening on the news. And we don't take the time to slow down and allow for communication in which we are able to be present in who we are, checking in with how we're doing, checking in with our partners or these other people who are important to us that we want to connect with in a really deep and authentic way. And so when we can set aside time for non-transactional communication, this is going to foster greater depth, greater connection, and greater awareness of where perhaps maybe you need to work on. Because here's what I know for certain. Relationships of all kinds, relationships are really hard. They require attention and intention. And in absence of that, we get disconnected. And we don't even sometimes notice that we're getting disconnected until one day we realize, wait a second, I haven't had a non-transactional conversation with my partner. I haven't had a conversation with my kid that wasn't telling them, chores that they had to do. And over time, that's going to diminish our sense of relationship. So one of the main frameworks that I talk about and teach with my clients is the framework of nonviolent communication, which was founded back in the 1960s by Marshall Rosenberg, who really wanted to find a way to communicate in a way that reduced defensiveness and inspired connection. So this is where you might want to take some notes. There's a 4-step process to this nonviolent communication pattern. And while it might feel really hard, it's just simply learning a new skill. So what I'll often advise my clients to do is write it down, place it on the fridge so people can see it, place it on your nightstand, maybe on your desk monitor, so you can have these reminders. Because until we get more practice, it's going to feel really awkward and uncomfortable. And the ability to cultivate the new tool to create more effective communication, to inspire deeper and more authentic connections is possible. Okay, so the first step in nonviolent communication is to simply observe the situation, observe what's arising and name it. So if, let's say, for example, you come home and you realize that the dishwasher hadn't been emptied and you're upset because that should be the job of, let's say, your partner. You do the cooking and they do the dishwasher, and the dishwasher hasn't been emptied and you're kind of pissed. And so it might be a habit to get angry, to be accusatory, to blame, to say something like, my God, you never do this. Why am I doing all the chores? The dishwasher, is your job. Why isn't it done? Well, if you approach the situation like that, likely the way the other person is going to receive that is no matter what, they're going to get defensive. Rarely, when being accused or blamed, will that person be like, yeah, you know what? You're right. I'm really, really sorry. I really should have done that earlier. They're likely going to at least start with a defense as to why it wasn't done. So a way to kind of go about it in a different way to reduce that defensiveness would be to be able to simply observe in a neutral way. Now, I'm sure you all know about using I statements, not you statements. So this is an opportunity to put the I statement into place. And I like to start this off by saying, I'm noticing. So that's a great way to walk into the situation and say, hey, love, I'm noticing the dishwasher hasn't been emptied. Now, notice I didn't say, I'm noticing you didn't empty the dishwasher, because that's still a you statement. That's kind of hidden inside an I statement. It doesn't really work. If we're really doing this properly in a way to really reduce defensiveness, it's to own the observation is what you see. I'm noticing the dishwasher hasn't been emptied. Okay, so that's number 1 of nonviolent communication. Number 2 is to name how it makes you feel when a situation like number 1 arises. So again, it's no you statements, it's no blaming, no accusations, no externalization. It's simply owning what you're feeling. So it would look like something like this. Hey, love, I'm noticing the dishwasher hasn't been emptied. And I just have to let you know, when the dishwasher doesn't get emptied, I feel really overwhelmed with the amount of chores around the house. And I begin to feel tired and exhausted because I feel like I'm taking on more chores to empty the dishwasher. Okay, so I named there, not seeing the dishwasher emptied makes me feel overwhelmed. I could say it another way. Hey, love, I'm noticing the dishwasher hasn't been emptied. And when the dishwasher doesn't get emptied, I feel a little disrespected because I do so much work to cook, and I do so much work to do the food shopping, and this is after a long day of work. And so when the dishwasher doesn't get emptied, it's making me feel a little disrespected by there is not an equal amount of work going into our partnership to take care of our home. Okay, so another way to say it. In both of those scenarios, I named different emotions that might arise. One was overwhelmed, that there's so much to do. The other one was disrespected, that there was an unequal amount of work going into the partnership of taking care of the home. Neither one of those had blame or accusations. Hope you can see how there's a shift here. Okay, number 3 of nonviolent communication is, in general terms, what do you need to alleviate the emotion from statement number 2? So if you are feeling overwhelmed, something you might be able to say, so when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I generally need some more help. Or if you were feeling disrespected, when I'm feeling disrespected, one of the things that really helps make me feel better from that is when I see equal efforts in our partnership. Or one of the things when I'm feeling really angry is to be acknowledged for what I'm feeling. Okay, so number one, name what you see arising and observe the situation. I like to use that phrase, I'm noticing. Number two is name how it makes you feel. Number three is to name in general terms what you need to do to alleviate the feeling. And the last one, number four, is going to make a specific request in this moment that pertains specifically to number one. So hun, so right now, can you please empty the dishwasher? So right now, can you help figure out how we can have more equal partnership of the labor around the house? So right now, can you just give me a hug because I'm feeling really angry and overwhelmed? So I invite you to practice this. It's hard at first. I would share with whoever you want to practice this on that this is the framework so they don't think that you're just speaking kind of strange out of the blue. But I'm going to go through those really quick. Observe the situation, name what's arising, name how it makes you feel, name what you need in general ways to alleviate that emotion, and then make a specific request in this moment. I love this framework. It doesn't have to be long and drawn out. It can be really simple in one complete sentence of how you can state all of these different things. Hey, Lev, I noticed the dishwasher wasn't emptied, which just makes me feel so overwhelmed. And when I'm overwhelmed, I just begin to shut down because I feel like I have to take more on. So right now, can you please help me with this? There it is in 4 steps. So after learning nonviolent communication, there a couple of years ago was a phenomenal book that came out by a guy named Oren J. Sofer. He's a beautiful teacher in the field of mindfulness and meditation. And he actually studied under Marshall Rosenberg on nonviolent communication. And he actually went to Marshall and said, hey, you know what's missing from your framework is mindfulness. And Marshall thought about it and said, you know what? You're right. Why don't you take that on? And so he did. And this is the book, Say What You Mean. And it is a phenomenal book and guide in how to bring more mindful awareness, because Oren's really right. You got to be able to have the awareness of yourself to know what's arising before you can even enter into that framework of nonviolent communication. If we're just operating on autopilot, we're likely to walk in and just raise our voice and yell and try to think that if we get louder, we'll get heard better. So some of the things that Oren adds in his teachings of mindful communication is to always come from a place of curiosity and compassion. And so what I like to do when working with my clients is for the curiosity piece. If someone in your life is doing something that is pissing you off, that you just don't understand, that is making you angry, that is causing you confusion, whatever it is, rather than walking them and being like, what the hell are you doing? Or why did you do that like that? Or, what motivated you to do this, right? Automatically, that's going to lead to a defensiveness on the other end. And this whole framework is to be able to reduce defensiveness and increase connection. So to have curiosity about it, one of my favorite phrases that I will use is to be able to say, so help me understand. So saying help me understand is a way of non-defensively asking someone to help explain to you where they're at without them having to feel like they need to, defend their position. And again, remember the first thing that I said, 4 things have to be into alignment for your communication to be received in the way in which you intend. So if you say this very, I think, mindful and kind phrase of help me understand, if you say it in the wrong tone of voice, it's going to be completely received in a different way. So, hey, love, help me understand. Help me understand how you got to this decision. Help me understand what you've done today so I can see why maybe the dishwasher wasn't emptied. Curiosity is a huge piece for relationships to stay present, to get out of assumptions and to get out of judgments. If we can stay curious, we are inherently being mindful because we are not drawing upon things from the past to make sense of why what's happening right now. Stay curious keeps us aware, and also understanding that we're always changing. And so we can't make assumptions on people because they've likely grown and changed, and we haven't always been able to catch up on what those growth and changes look like. So I really love this phrase, help me understand. What is it you're needing from me right now? Help me understand what it is that you're feeling. Help me understand how you got to that decision. Help me understand how that story of your childhood is keeping you really stuck right now. It's going to reduce defensiveness, allow someone to feel more safe and comfortable and open in communicating with you. Okay, the other piece that Oren talks about in his book is compassion. And I think compassion is such an important practice. As I've always said, I believe compassion is the opposite of judgment. So if you are feeling judgmental towards yourself or others, see how you can reframe that and turn that into a compassionate question or statement. So a compassionate statement might start off by saying, wow, it looks like it's been a really long day for you. Tell me about your day. Has this been a really hard day? What's been going on? Oh, wow, there's been so much going on. I can see why maybe perhaps some of the chores didn't get attended to. So right off the bat, if you can come from a place of curiosity and compassion, let those be your northern stars to guide you in more mindful communication. It's huge. This is, you guys, this is a game changer in how you can communicate with others. So there's a couple of more things that I want to share with you that are taken from some other different work. The first are some tools by John and Julie Gottman, who are preeminent researchers in the field of marriage and relationships for over 40 years, have been scientifically studying relationships to determine what they find are the patterns of what they call masters versus disasters in relationship. And there are a couple of tools that are easy, or maybe I should say simple, but not always easy to remember. But when you can remember to implement, it can create a huge shift in how your communication goes. One of my favorite ones is what's called the softened startup. The softened startup is asking your partner, hey, I've got a question. Can you let me know when a good time to talk is? Versus barging into their room and be like, hey, I need to know this right now. If you can do the softened startup of planting the seed for a conversation that you'd like to have, they have the opportunity to look up and give you their attention, say, hey, I'm good right now. What do you got? Or they have the opportunity to say, you know what? Now's not actually a great time. I'm focused on this work deadline, but I'm free in 30 minutes. How about we talk then? So this softened startup is really, really important because, again, we all want to feel seen, heard, and validated. And when we don't feel seen, heard, and validated, we get disconnected, we shut down, we get distant. And these are all tools to help us increase our connections and have them be real, authentic connections. So again, this is something I work with so much of my clients around is, when you want to go talk to your partner, and let's say you're having a little crisis about something and you really are needing their support, they may not be available in the moment that you need them. So asking, hey, I'm really needing some extra support right now. Are you available for that right now? And if they're not, do your best to not judge them. Have compassion that they were busy before your crisis occurred. They likely want to keep focused. But it's also a great opportunity to help you self-regulate in that moment in absence of having them alleviate some of the crisis that you're carrying in that moment. So the softened startup is something that is really easy to do, even with your kids. It does not have to be just, between partners. These communication skills are great for any relational dynamic. And one more thing I want to share is from Terry Real. And if you guys don't know his work, I highly recommend checking him out. He does relational therapy. He's written so many great books. One of my favorite is called Say What You Mean. But he talks about knowing how to ask the right question. And he differentiates between what he refers to as an invitation, a request, or a demand. And if you ask the wrong question and you get what you think is the wrong answer, it can cause great disconnection in the relationship. So an invitation is a question in which has a yes or no answer. Hey, do you want to go to dinner with my mom on Friday night? Is an invitation. If you ask your partner, hey, do you want to go to dinner with my mom on Friday night? And they say no, you're likely to get like butt hurt. Like, how dare they not want to come with me? You asked a question that had a yes or no answer. So you really gave them the option to answer either way. A request is where you're asking something of someone based on a higher value of yours. So you're giving context around the request. Hey, love, I want to know if you wanted to come to dinner with me and my mom on Friday night. She's been feeling a little extra lonely these days, and I know she would really benefit from our company. So now you've asked a question based on a value that you are sharing. It's a lot harder to say no to a request. And in fact, when my own partner and I, John and I, have talked about this, we sometimes will jokingly, or maybe he will jokingly say to me, like, is there a limit on how many requests that we can have? And of course, it was a joke. But this was right after a time where we learned this framework together. And I asked him a question and he said no. And I was butt hurt by it. And then a couple of days went by and I realized, wait, I asked him the wrong question. And as I started to ask the question, he knew exactly where I was headed. And he was like, this is a request, isn't it? And I said, yes. And of course, then his answer became yes. Because if we really care about our partners, we're wanting to help meet their needs. A demand is kind of the opposite of mindful communication. A demand is obvious in its name, but it's a, hey, you're doing this, whether you like it or not. That generally doesn't go over well. That's generally going to cause some defensiveness or disconnection. So I invite you to look at all of these things. So we covered lots of different areas. The first one was the 4 different aspects of communication that need to be in alignment for you to get the communication across in the way in which you intend. So those 4 things are language, tone, volume, and body language. If any one of those is out of alignment, it's going to be really difficult for your message to be received. We talked about the patterns of nonviolent communication, naming what's arising, how it makes you feel, what you generally need to alleviate that emotion, and a specific request in this moment. We talked about the softened startup as per the Gottman method. And the last one was per Terry Real, invitations, request, and demand. And of course, this is all within the context of understanding language holds power. Language holds an immense amount of power. This is why I get so nitpicky when my kids were little, if they were to say, I can't do that. Okay, well, that language holds power. And I would say to them, as soon as you say you can't, you've decided you won't. Language holds that level of power. So whether we're saying it out loud, whether we're talking to ourselves in our own mind, this is why I get, really try to teach people to be aware of the power of and instead of but, which I talked about a couple weeks ago in the episode on paradox and holding 2 truths. The and allows for our experience to hold multiple truths at the same time. The but negates it. So don't dismiss the power of your words, whether it's in your own mind or whether it's to others. And that mindful communication, as I define it, mindful communication is speaking your truth, authentically communicating where you're at. And of course, part of the reasons that it becomes mindful in its foundation is because it's not always intended to get someone to do something different, to have non-attachment to the outcome, that I'm simply sharing this for you to know where I'm at, how I'm feeling, and for me to authentically name what's coming up for me right now. So I hope that you found these communication tools helpful. I will have some resources in the show notes. I will have some of the links to the different books that I talked about, and I'll even have a handout that can give you guys these frameworks in case you didn't write them down. And I really would love to hear back of your feedback on this. So whether it's, finding me on Instagram, and I hope that you guys have joined my new podcast Instagram account. It's just Journey Forward with Jory Rose, all one long word, where I am posting daily on different aspects of the podcast episode from that week. So I would love for you to follow the new Instagram account at Journey Forward with Jory Rose, and share with me any of your feedback and tools from this episode and what you resonated with the most or what you found the hardest, and give me some feedback and let me know what it's been like for you once you implement it. I know that this takes practice. So if you fumble along the way, just name that. Yeah, this is really hard for me right now. And I'm working on trying to communicate in a more effective way. Because I know the power of effective communication can really inspire greater depth, greater connection, and ultimately helps us to be seen, heard, and validated. So thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode. I really value being part of the Journey Forward community. If this spoke to you, I would thank you so much in advance for sharing a rating or a review so we can get more people to journey forward to live their best lives. Take care and be well.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat, visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.